Yes, thanks for the introduction, Oliver. My name's Aileen Day, and I am the lead for working group, the metadata working group for PSDI. As Oliver says, there's quite a parallel between NFDI and what we're trying to do. You are way further down the road than we are, so this is just giving you a really top level idea of what we're planning more than what we've actually done, but hopefully it'll give you an idea, and we are hoping to progress things and to get more into this kind of thing that you're doing further down the line. So I'm going to introduce you to PSDI and its metadata. I'm going to talk about what we're planning to do for version 1 of PSDI, and I'll just give a really quick placeholder for what we're planning to do beyond that, because I think probably that's the area that most people will be interested in here. So firstly, what's PSDI? We're physical sciences data infrastructure. So it's funded by the EPSRC, the UK research funding, and the scope is for the whole of the physical sciences to hold its research data, essentially. This might make it a bit clearer if I talk in terms of what we're aiming to produce. We've got the data infrastructure, and on the data infrastructure, we've got a platform that sits and makes everything available. We have certain services, tools, guidance, and metadata that apply to the whole platform. So they're developed by the PSDI core team, and they can talk to all of the different bits of PSDI. But we also have different buckets within that, where people can group together data services, tools, and guidance that are developed by a particular community with a particular resource theme. So in version 1 of PSDI, we have 8 pathfinders, and they're basically seeding projects for PSDI, and each of those produces at least one resource theme, sometimes more than one, which groups together their outputs. So they're developing those, and we're stitching together the services, tools, guidance, and metadata to join them all together. So this is kind of what's going to be available via the platform, and in parallel there's a lot of community activities that are going on. You've probably heard there's a lot of invitations going on for town hall meetings and various other meetings that PSDI organise to support it. As I said, my focus is the metadata. And I'm seeing this as the glue which holds together these resource themes and stitches it together to the PSDI-wide services. So the services talk to the metadata, and the metadata describes what's inside all of these resource themes and gives it a common framework. So the metadata that we're aiming to produce for PSDI version 1, I've been throwing that term around a bit. PSDI version 1 is coming out in March 2025, so we've got a few months before then. And it's very much aimed as a MVP, a minimum viable product, to give people the kind of idea of what PSDI could do and get community feedback for where to go beyond it. So it's basically what can we do that sparks discussion. So in terms of the metadata, some of you might recognise this schematic as being from the CDIF recommendations. So CDIF is a 180-page long technical report from Codata, which and Worldfair, which describes how you should structure the metadata for a cross-domain repository, which came out last year. So I was delighted to read it and to see its recommendations. I was even more delighted to see that there's a few things that we'd already been going to do that it recommended that we should do. So we're aiming to follow C. diff as far as we can. There's some bits which might not be applicable for PSDI, but if we possibly can, it seems like a good starting point. So C. diff recommends that the core discovery is described by either schema.org or DCAT. So we're aiming to use DCAT. STFC, our joint partners in PSDI, the Science and Technology Facilities Council. They have close ties with DCAT because it partly came out from them, so it makes sense to use that. So we're describing what's in PSDI and what's in the resource catalogue by DCAT JSON-LD. And we had one challenge at the start of the project was different people using different terms for the same things, so we all needed to talk the same language. So the very first output was a SCOS vocabulary, which just described those top level terms of PSDI, the ones in the framework that I just showed you. So these were things that we were going to do anyway, and we were really happy to see that C. diff recommended that we do them. So we'll be doing that. We're going to see how far we get with some of the other profiles, just because we're a little bit limited on time for version 1. Some of the other recommendations look like they could be good, and we'll just see how we do with those, basically. The one that we probably won't use for version 1 is the data description, which relies on DDI, CDI, which is a bit more suited towards CSV file formats, which we don't have that many of in PSDI. So even the report recommends that they develop this further in future versions of C. diff. So we'll come back to this and revisit it later on. So the metadata, we're publishing it in the first instance. We just wanted a quick way to get it out so that people could see it. We're using GitHub pages to do that. I see Stuart Chalk is here. Stuart Chalk has used GitHub pages a lot to put out his JSON-LD, so that seemed like a good way to follow him. This is not necessarily the way that we're going to go long term. We're going to get more data as we go forward, so we'll probably need a proper system for storing it and managing it. But in the first instance, because it's very top level metadata, there's not very much of it, and this is the best way to get it out so that the rest of our developers can start developing against it in the quickest possible way. So we've got the actual JSON-LD files that are available, and we've also got we're building up guidance to go along with it. So this is the kind of thing that we're capturing in the guidance. And this is what the JSON-LD looks like in the GitHub. So we've got definitions in the vocabulary JSON-LD for each of these terms that I showed you before. So we've got the framework for what we're putting out in PSDI, and we've got definitions for each item in that framework defined in a SCOS vocabulary. There's a lot more that could go into this vocabulary as we go along, but it was the first version that we can grow on effectively. There was a lot of discussion went into each of these terms because there was a lot of different people had to agree on this. So even though there's only about 12 there, it took quite a long time to come up with this. We've also got a human readable form of that vocabulary in the guidance. So this is retrieved dynamically from the JSON LD and just put in a way that people can read easier. We are aiming for the JSON LD to be the single source of truth, and we're going to have various tools that mean that it can be presented in different ways, but if we update the JSON LD, then everything else will reflect that. We've also got the resource catalogue. If there are objects that are stored as each of these things, so each service and tool that is being released as part of PSDI is described by DCAT fields. A lot of them parallel what's in DCAT. So there are already definitions for a DCAT catalog and dataset and data service. There wasn't already a definition for tools or guidance, so we've made a first version of an extension of DCAT to describe those resources. Again, this is all being stored in the JSON LD, and it will have a nice user interface for the gateway that normal users use. So the JSON LD will be the full technical description that's rendered nicely for users. This is the kind of thing that's stored in the resource catalogue. This is in progress. We've got some examples in there. What we're doing now is we have some Excel templates that the pathfinders are all filling in descriptions of what they're releasing. And we're developing an automatic converter to convert that to the JSON LD. Having it in Excel just means there's quite a lot of iterations with different people on the Pathfinder's side updating it, people on the PSDI side suggesting changes. So it just means that we can bat things to and fro until we've got something that everyone's happy with, and then update the big JSON LD. This is all going to be part of the pipeline, metadata pipeline, and there'll be shackle validation and other validation. There'll be conversion into different, we've got JSON LD, but I know that a lot of people are interested in turtles, so there'll be conversion to different formats as well. This is kind of all part of a pipeline that will support the metadata and update it. My screen stop sharing. In time, we might replace this by a shackle-based web form. I'm just looking at the time, so I will scooch through. This is probably the bit that most people are interested in here, is beyond. So as I said, everything that we're planning for version 1 is very high level. It's describing PSDI. It's describing the top level of our catalogue.
Aileen, sorry to interrupt, but at least for me, the screen is blank currently. Although you seem to share your slides.
Okay, I'll try clicking on that again. There's not very much there, so if this doesn't work, I will just talk in English. Is this appearing now?
Not yet.
No, okay. All I'll say is it's basically a picture of the C.diff slide, and it says that
Now we have it.
Oh, have you? Okay, cool. So we're doing this top level stuff, and beyond version 1, we need to move down to the data level metadata, the metadata that describes the data, and the provenance level metadata, which gets much harder because it gets bigger and there's a lot more of it, and you need tools to develop it as you start doing this. So this will include the domain level metadata and the kinds of things that you're talking about in this meeting. So I'm going to make lots of notes for the bits that I can make, and I'm going to revisit them when we're past version 1, and I'm hopefully going to be working with you all a lot more on it as we move on past version 1 of PSDI. So I've put my email address there. If anyone's interested in contacting me to talk about any of this, I'd be open to that. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take those now.